Mornings in this house have a sound. The faucet ticks like a metronome while I rinse oatmeal from the bowls. A ceiling fan hums just off balance, a wobble that would drive my late husband crazy if he were still here to lift a ladder and fix it. Down Cannon Street, a cargo horn answers the tide. It's the sort of quiet Charleston gives a widow who keeps busy. Obedient, polished, a little lonely at the edges. Daniel left before sunrise with his tubing of drawings tucked beneath his arm, already talking to himself about setbacks and elevations. Owen's bus sighed at the corner. He'd hopped aboard waving his lunchbox like a flag, teeth missing, and proud about it. And Celeste, my daughter-in-law, my delicate steam kettle who sometimes purrs and sometimes shrieks, called down the stairs, "Mom, I'm going to take a quick shower." Her vowels satin, smooth as always. I told her, "All right, honey," and thought about whether to bake cornbread for supper. The landline rang. It's the same brass-belled phone we installed when Franklin was still alive. A thing that refuses to die and refuses to be ignored. I wiped my hands on a towel and lifted the receiver. "Mom," Leo said, wind in his voice and a grin I could hear. "Just checking on you. Long layover. I've got a flight out in 40 minutes. My shoulders loosened. "Oh, my boy, where are you headed? You sound good." "Lisbon. Gorgeous sky out here. He stopped, the way he does when he's not sure whether to laugh or confess. "Listen, something weird just happened." Water ran upstairs, a clean, steady rush that made the pipes thrum through the walls. "What kind of weird?" I kept my voice light. "Celeste weird." He let out a short, incredulous breath. "Mom, I think I just watched her board my flight. First class, passport in my hand, her picture, her name. She's with a suit. They're close." For a beat, I lost my grip on language. "Celeste is here," I said, and heard myself say it like a person trying to halt a train by standing on the tracks. "She's upstairs. I just spoke to her. She's showering." He fell quiet. So quiet I heard the hollow airport announcements ghost through the line. Then, carefully, like he was talking me down from a ledge, "I'm looking at her, Mom." I double-checked because it felt insane, but the passport is hers. It's stamped. She boarded with a man named Langford. Pierce Langford. His agent came through with 3 bags and a face I wanted to punch. I pressed the receiver hard to my ear, like more contact could fix what I was hearing. I could see Celeste in my mind, the way her hair spills when she shakes it, the way she insists on folding a throw over the couch, even when Owen is only going to kick it off again. "Honey," I said, because the mouth will sometimes say what the heart insists on, "you must have seen wrong." Leo didn't laugh. "Mom." Upstairs, the shower shut off. Pipes rattled, satisfied. Footsteps crossed the hall, feather light at first, then confident. The carpet on those stairs is a low blue pile, easy on the knees when you've got 63 years to carry. I turned my back to the stairwell without thinking, as if the act of not seeing might hold 2 conflicting truths apart. "What are you doing?" I whispered into the phone, as though whispering would make the facts less sharp. "I'm walking toward the jetway because I have to close this door in 30 seconds, he said softly. "I could be wrong, I could be crazy, but I'm telling you what I see and what I'm holding. I'll call you once we land." I didn't trust my hands. "Don't hang up yet." The bedroom door upstairs opened. "Who is it?" Celeste called, her voice easy, a little bright, the way she sounds when she's already put on her day like a dress. I could smell her shampoo white tea, that expensive smell that makes a room feel newer than at Island. "Just a friend," I called back, and it wasn't entirely a lie. Leo is my friend in the old way of that word, the one that means faithful and known, right down to his baby cowlick. I motioned toward the living room and pulled the telephone cord taut, closing the door behind me so fast the framed photo of Franklin on the mantel rattled. "Mom," Leo said, gentler, "I'll be home on Friday. We'll sort it out, but please don't let anyone make you feel crazy between now and then." My throat hurt. I won't. Footsteps paused outside the living room door. On the line, a chime sounded the tone Leo's phone makes when they're sealing the cabin. I pictured him in that crisp uniform, jaw clenched, doing math I couldn't see. Then the click came, and the gentle emptiness a call leaves when it goes. I stood in the living room breathing like a creature that has forgotten how. The shears glowed with midday Sunday. On the bookcase behind me, our family marched across time in silver frames. Daniel and Celeste under live oaks the day they married, her mouth open mid-laugh, Owen red, faced and slick at birth. Leo in his first uniform, a smooth-cheeked boy trying to look like the sky belonged to him. My hand reached for the nearest frame and missed. Celeste knocked once and let herself in. Her damp hair bent the light. She wore that pale blue dress I've always liked on her because it turns her eyes seawater green. "Everything all right?" she asked, eyebrows lifted with gentle concern. "You look a little flushed." "I'm fine," I said. I could hear how unconvincing I sounded and hated myself briefly for it. "Just got sentimental on the phone," Leo called. She smiled, the exact wattage she uses when the neighbor ladies are over with hot dish and gossip. "How is our pilot?" "Busy." The word caught and splintered in my mouth. "Oh, let me grab my basket," she said brightly, glancing toward the kitchen. "Do you need anything from the market? I thought I'll pick up tomatoes before they run out. And ginger for Owen sniffles." Ginger for Owen, a perfect, attentive sentence. I wanted to put my ear to it and listen for a seam. "Tomatoes," I said. "If they're good." She kissed the air near my cheek, already moving, already elsewhere. When the front door clicked shut behind her, the quiet returned, but it was a different quiet alert, staring, ears pricked. If you're listening, if you've made it this far into my foolish morning, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my story of revenge from. I need to know how far truth can travel, because today it will have to outrun a lie. I went to the sink and turned the tap, not because anything needed washing, but because the sound steadied me. The faucet tap-tapped, an old metronome pulling breath into my ribs. I thought about the tiny oddities I'd been smoothing flat for months, how Celeste sometimes wrote grocery lists with her right hand, neat little angles, and other times with the left, loops that wandered. How she'd greet Mrs. Dupree like a long-lost cousin one day and cut past her the next with a face like shut shutters. How her perfume had been gardenia in June, and then overnight turned to something muskier I didn't recognize. I'd told myself people are allowed to change. Women, especially, are allowed to be more than one thing. The blue dress floated in my mind, then the white blouse she wore yesterday, then the yellow sundress from last Sunday that made Daniel beam when he saw her. I remembered a lullaby, too, the one my mother sang when I was little, the one I sang to my boys and then to Owen on thunderstorms. Duermete, mi niño. Last week, Owen told me, "Mom sang your sleepy song, and it was pretty." And I believed him because children do not lie about comfort. 2 nights later, he said, "Mom was busy and didn't want to sing." Small mouth in a straight, brave line. Through the window, I watched Celeste walk along the iron fence, the market basket on her arm, hips swaying like a woman certain of her audience. When she turned the corner, I waited for peace to settle, and it didn't. A slow unease unspooled instead, thread after thread from some spool inside my chest I hadn't known was there. I wiped the sink a second time. I told myself fidelity to facts was all I had. Celeste called down that she was showering. I heard water run. Leo said he held her passport in his hand, her face in a photo, her name in black letters, and that she boarded a plane with a man whose name didn't belong in any of our mouths. 2 things can be true, I suppose, when the universe is playing at cruelty. But in a house like mine, with old pine floors that remember footsteps and a widow's eyes that have learned to sort shadows from men, there is usually only one truth, and it sits quietly until you're brave enough to look. The metronome dripped. I dried the basin. I took down my red-spined notebook, the one with Franklin's initials worn faint on the corner, and I wrote, 9:12 a.m. Celeste in pale blue dress. Showered. Said, market. Leo says Celeste boarded 9:05 a.m. CHS is greater than LIS with Pierce Langford. First class. Passport verified. My hand shook only a little. After I set the pen down, I pressed my palm to the page as if I could warm the ink into something steadier than doubt. The fan wobbled. A horn answered the river. Somewhere, a big plane lifted its white belly toward the Atlantic, wheels tucking up like an animal hiding its paws. I stood in the doorway and looked at the staircase, at the exact spot where Celeste had emerged a half-hour ago with her damp hair and the smell of white tea clinging to her like permission. Then I looked at the door she'd just left through, the heat trembling above the street, the world that would keep spinning whether or not I found the seam. If there are two of her, I thought, not ready for the words and thinking them anyway, then there is one I don't know. And if there is one I don't know, then I had better learn her name. The night pressed down over Charleston like a damp quilt. I sat in my porch rocker, listening to cicadas scrape their endless hymn, the notebook balanced heavy on my lap. Every line I had written today pulsed in my chest as though the ink itself had a heartbeat. Celeste, in her pale blue dress. Leo's certainty across the ocean sky. The impossible truth that two realities had collided inside the same hour. Daniel pulled into the drive just after 9, headlights flashing across the roses Franklin planted before his illness took him. He was always a solid boy, sturdy shoulders, work boots that came home scuffed with plans and effort. Tonight, though, his frame looked folded, weary. He stepped up onto the porch, smiled a thin smile, kissed my temple. "Smells like cornbread," he said, glancing toward the kitchen. I wanted to say, "It smells like fear," but instead I told him the pan was still warm. He ducked inside, and I stayed on the porch, staring at the stars that barely blinked through city haze. When Celeste returned, it was as though she had rehearsed the performance. She carried a wicker basket lined with gingham, her damp hair braided into a neat crown. She pressed a kiss to Daniel's cheek, laid her purchases on the counter, and chatted about cilantro bunches, fish fresh on ice, the banter of the market vendors. Her hands moved with grace, her eyes soft, her laugh timed to his sighs. A perfect tableau of domesticity. But I was listening harder than watching. Something about her voice snagged me. It was pitched lower than this morning, as though her chords were roughened by smoke or secrecy. When she glanced my way, her smile was kind, but it didn't quite reach her irises, and a little ache tugged behind my sternum. Later, as I wiped down the table, Owen skipped in with his sketch pad. He climbed onto my lap and spread the pages wide. "Look, Grandma," he said, tracing tiny finger lines. "Yesterday, Mommy helped me write my spelling words, and her letters looked like this. Neat, straight capitals lined one page. But today she wrote these." He flipped the sheet. Letters curled clumsy, slanted left. I stroked his hair, praying he wouldn't see my throat clench. "Your mom was probably tired, sweetheart," I whispered. "It happens." He frowned, pressing his cheek into my arm. "She's different every day. Sometimes she hugs me so tight I can't breathe, and sometimes she doesn't even see me. 7 years old, and already he could tell when love rang hollow." I kissed his temple, swallowing the stone in my chest. When I tucked him into bed, he asked me to sing Duérmete, mi niño, my lullaby, not Celeste's. His eyelids fluttered as the words floated over him. But before he drifted off, he murmured, "Grandma, Mommy sang it yesterday, just like you." I froze. Only 2 voices in this house had ever known that song, mine and Daniel's wife. But if Owen's memory was right, then perhaps there were indeed 2 voices, 2 women who wore the same face. The next day, while folding laundry, I noticed Celeste pick up Daniel's shirt with her left hand and begin ironing with perfect ease. My stomach dropped. She had always favored her right. I tested her gently. You're good with that hand. She looked up sharply, then laughed. Too fast. Ambidextrous, Mom. Didn't you know? I smiled thinly, biting back my retort. By evening, I'd convinced myself I could ignore it that widows sometimes weave storms from shadows. But the doorbell shattered that fragile denial. Mrs. Dupree, our neighbor 2 doors down, stood smiling with her pearl earrings winking in the porch light. She handed me back the casserole dish Celeste had brought her the night before. Tell your daughter-in-law I said thank you again. Though, she added with a tilt of her head, funny thing yesterday she gave it with her left hand. You once told me she was right-handed, yes? My pulse thundered. I forced a laugh. Maybe she likes to surprise us. But inside, I wanted to cry out, you see it too, don't you? When I carried the empty dish to the sink, my knees shook. This wasn't just my imagination. Others saw the fracture lines. That night, I sat at the kitchen table beneath the yellow lamp. The house was silent, except for Daniel's deep breathing down the hall. I opened the red notebook and began a log with ruthless precision. Tuesday, Celeste returns from market in blue blouse, though left in white. Said it was spilled on. Wednesday, helped Owen with homework. Handwriting left-handed. Previous day, right. Thursday, voice deeper. Perfume musky. Market basket different color. Each entry was a pin driven into a map of betrayal. My pen scratched furiously until the page blurred with ink. Then I set it down, pressing my trembling palms flat. I could no longer deny it. If there weren't 2 Celestes, then the one I knew was splitting herself like glass under pressure. And I, Mara Whitfield, 63, widow, mother, grandmother, would have to gather the shards before they cut us all. The following morning began with a quiet that felt staged, like a curtain held aloft just before the play begins. I brewed chicory coffee, poured it into Franklin's old mug, and sat at the table with my notebook open, the pen poised but unmoving. Celeste glided in, her hair in a sleek bun, a cream dress brushing just below her knees. "Morning, Mom," she said softly, her smile polished, eyes alert. She kissed my cheek, then bent to pour a glass of water. The left hand again. Always the left when she wanted me to notice, or perhaps when she didn't realize I was watching. "Do you want me to pick up something special for dinner?" she asked, as though nothing in our world had cracked. I swallowed. "No, darling. Just whatever's fresh." Her gaze lingered on me a second too long, a flicker of calculation behind the sweetness. Then she grabbed her basket and slipped out the door. The moment she disappeared down the street, I moved. My shawl over my shoulders, notebook in hand, I stepped outside and followed, careful to keep my distance. She walked past the familiar turn toward the market. Instead, she drifted left, down an alley that smelled of rust and old salt. The houses leaned on one another here, paint peeling, tin roofs groaning. I pressed myself against a wall as she stopped at a warped wooden door. She knocked twice, glanced over her shoulder, and disappeared inside. My chest thundered. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to count to 10 before stepping forward. I wanted to pound on that door, demand answers. Instead, fear rooted me to the cracked pavement. "Not yet, Mara. Not yet." I turned and made my way back, my palms clammy, heart racing. But when I stepped into our kitchen, the breath in my lungs caught like fabric on a nail. There she was. Celeste stood at the counter, in a different outfit, a white blouse this time chopping carrots. Her eyes were cool when she looked at me. "You're late, Mom. Where'd you go?" I nearly dropped my purse. "Just for a walk," I murmured, the lie sour on my tongue. Her gaze lingered, sharp as a blade. Then she returned to her cutting board, rhythm steady. I fled to my room, heart hammering so hard it rattled my ribs. I sat on the edge of my bed, notebook trembling in my lap, and scrawled, 11 a.m. Saw Celeste in yellow floral dress enter House Hashtwatwo on Fisher Alley. 11:30 a.m. Returned home. Celeste already here. White blouse. Cooking. Impossible. the word impossible smeared under my pen, but I left it. It was the truest word I had. That night, Owen climbed into my lap, his cheeks red from tears. "Grandma," Mommy yelled at me for dropping my pencil. But yesterday she hugged me and sang our song. His voice cracked with confusion. "I want the Mommy from yesterday." I rocked him gently, though my hands trembled. "I know, sweetheart," I whispered. "I know." When sleep finally claimed him, I returned to the kitchen, notebook open. I whispered aloud the thought I'd tried to banish. Maybe they are not the same person. The words hung heavy in the air, daring me to believe them. The next morning, with the sun sharp and merciless, I returned to that alley. I clutched a family photo in my hand. Daniel, Celeste, Owen smiling beneath live oaks, and approached the woman selling roasted corn at the corner. "Excuse me," I asked, holding the photo, my voice trembling. "Have you seen this woman around here?" She squinted at the picture, then nodded. "Of course. She goes into number 22 often. Lives there, I think." My knees nearly gave out. Still, I forced my feet forward to that peeling wooden door with its wilted flower pot on the sill. I knocked, my heart a war drum in my chest. The door opened, and standing before me was Celeste or her mirror. Same face, same dark hair, same delicate frame, but her eyes were wide with fear, her hands shaking as she clutched a rag. I stammered, gripping the photo like a talisman. "Celeste?" The woman gasped, tried to shut the door, but a voice inside called out, firm and calm, "Isadora, don't hide. She deserves the truth." A second woman stepped forward. Not Celeste, not Isadora. Someone new, with kind eyes and steady hands. "Please, Mrs. Whitfield," she said, gesturing me in. "It's time you knew everything." I hesitated only a moment before crossing the threshold into a house that smelled of disinfectant and secrets. The room I stepped into felt like another world, low ceiling, cracked plaster, a single bulb buzzing faintly overhead. The air was thick with disinfectant and damp wood, and from a cot in the corner came the ragged cough of an elderly woman wrapped in threadbare blankets. The woman before me, so like Celeste that my knees wobbled, clutched the rag tighter against her chest. Her lips quivered, her eyes darting as though she expected me to spit venom. The second woman, younger, with auburn hair, pulled into a careless bun, drew out a chair. "Please sit, Mrs. Whitfield. I'm Tamsin. I help keep this house afloat." Her voice was steady, practical, the sort of tone nurses must have when families collapse. Saturday. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Who is she?" My finger shook as I pointed at the double. Her chin dipped, and her whisper was so small I had to lean forward to catch it. "I'm not Celeste. My name is Isadora." The name shivered through me, strange and foreign, yet anchored in a face I'd known for years. Tamsin laid a hand on her friend's shoulder. "Isadora doesn't mean you harm. She's been caught in something she can't control. Let us explain." And so the story began. Years ago, Beatrice, the frail woman on the cot, worked as a nurse in a county hospital an hour outside Charleston. One night, a destitute family delivered twin girls. The mother wept, swore she couldn't feed both. "One I must keep," she told Beatrice, "the other will starve." Beatrice couldn't bear it. Against all procedure, she slipped the infant home and raised her as her own. That child was Isadora. When Tamsin reached this part, Beatrice rasped from her cot, her words thin but clear. "I saved her life, but I could never give her answers. Only love." Tears stung my eyes. I looked at Isadora, at Celeste's echo, and my voice cracked. You and Celeste, you're twins?" Isadora's shoulders shook. "I didn't know until a few years ago. I met her by chance at a street market. It was like staring at my own reflection. She laughed and said fate had handed her a miracle. Then she made me an offer." Her eyes brimmed. "She paid me to be her sometimes. To go to your house, to the market, to tend to Owen. Just a few hours at a time. She said it was harmless, that she only needed breaks from the burden of her life, and I needed the money. My parents' medicine was more than we could afford. I gripped the arms of the chair so tightly the wood groaned. All those times, the shifting moods, the sudden coldness, the handwriting that tilted from right to left, it hadn't been one woman unraveling. It had been two women, trading places like performers behind a curtain. Tamsin leaned closer. I once saw Celeste with a man, wealthy, polished. They sat in a cafe, whispering pet names. I heard him call her darling. His name was Pierce Langford. The name struck me like ice water. Leo's voice echoed in my mind. She's in first class with a rich man. Isadora's hands trembled as she twisted the rag. I never asked questions. I told myself it was none of my business. But lately I see Owen's face in my dreams and I hate myself. I never wanted to hurt him or you. Her tears slipped freely now. I rose, legs unsteady, rage and sorrow battling inside me. Celeste deceived us all. She used you, her own blood, as a mask. She betrayed my son, my grandson, this family. My voice broke. And you let her. Isadora collapsed into sobs. Tamsin squeezed her shoulder, but her own eyes glistened. I could have screamed, cursed, stormed out. But looking at the trembling woman before me, I saw no schemer. I saw a desperate daughter, trapped by a love for her sick parents. A pawn, not the player. I don't forgive her, I said quietly, but I understand. I straightened, my resolve hardening like iron. This ends now. My son deserves the truth. My grandson deserves safety. I will not let Celeste hollow us out any longer. I left the house with the family photo still clenched in my hand, the edges bent and damp with sweat. Outside the sun blazed, but inside me stretched a winter that would not thaw. On my walk home, I repeated the truth aloud, as if carving it into stone. They are twins. One built her life on deception, the other on silence, and I will expose them both. Sleep evaded me that night. I sat at the dining table with only the oil lamp flickering, notebook open, the air heavy with silence. My handwriting sprawled across the page, uneven and trembling. Celeste and Isadora are twins. Beatrice, a nurse, took Isadora when her parents abandoned her. Celeste hired Isadora to impersonate her. Purpose: conceal an affair with Pierce Langford. Each line was a dagger, and still, I wrote, my family had lived with ghosts in plain sight, and I had smiled at them across the supper table. When dawn came, I tied my shawl tightly and dialed Leo. He answered groggy, his voice muffled by the hotel sheets in Paris. "Mom, it's not even 6 back home." I told him everything. The market alley, Isadora's tears, Beatrice's confession, the name Pierce Langford. There was a long pause on the line, and then Leo exhaled sharply. Pierce Langford was on my flight. He's not just wealthy, he's infamous. A developer with 6 lawsuits trailing him, most involving women who trusted him too much. I clutched the phone tighter, bile rising in my throat. So she wasn't just sneaking away. She was building another life. Another life, he echoed, his voice cracked, and she dragged Owen into it with her lies. That day, I couldn't bear to look Celeste in the eye. She bustled through the kitchen, slicing vegetables, humming, asking Daniel about his projects. A perfect homemaker's mask. But every time her hand touched Owen's head, I saw the truth. She had abandoned her own sister, her own child's innocence, for greed. When night fell and the crickets sang, I placed a call to Carol, my oldest friend from Savannah, a woman who had stood by me since our girlhoods. She arrived the next morning with her cane tapping the porch, eyes sharp despite her years. Over steaming cups of chicory coffee, I laid out the notebook, every entry, every revelation. Carol read silently, her brows furrowing deeper with each line. When she looked up, her voice was iron. "You've been patient too long, Mara. You can't let her rot this family from the inside. You need to gather proof, undeniable proof. and bring it before Daniel, before that child gets hurt worse. Her words sliced me open because they were true. I had been patching over cracks, hoping love would hold, but the dam had burst, and now we were drowning. That evening, I confronted Celeste with calm I didn't feel. "Daniel's birthday is coming," I said as I folded the laundry. "I think we should have a family dinner. Invite Leo, too. It's been too long." She hesitated just a flicker before pasting on her usual smile. "Of course, Mom. I'll make his favorite pecan pie." Her eyes gleamed in a way that chilled me. She didn't know I had seen behind the curtain. She didn't know the noose of truth was already tightening. That night, after everyone slept, I walked barefoot through the dark house. I paused outside Owen's room, listening to his steady breaths. My hand rested on the doorframe as I whispered, "I will not let her destroy us. I swear it." The next morning, I penned the words that would change everything. Family dinner. Friday night. Truth revealed. Friday arrived cloaked in a strange stillness, like the air before a thunderstorm. I set the table with my mother's porcelain, lit the tall candles Daniel had given me last Christmas, and cooked dishes that smelled of memory-collard greens with ham hock, cornbread crisped golden, and a roast that filled the house with warmth I no longer felt inside. Celeste moved about the kitchen with practiced ease, humming as she rolled out the crust for the pecan pie. "This'll be perfect, Mom," she said sweetly, though her eyes were sharp and watchful. By twilight, Daniel came home, shoulders sagging from the week. He kissed Owen on the head and tousled his hair, a weary smile cracking across his face. "What's all this?" he asked, glancing at the spread on the table. "A family dinner," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "It's been too long since we all sat together." Moments later, Leo arrived, fresh from a flight, still in uniform. The silver of his pilot's stripes gleamed under the porch light. When he stepped inside, Celeste's face flickered just for a heartbeat before she masked it with delight. "Leo, how wonderful you could come," she exclaimed, hugging him a beat too tight, too rehearsed. The five of us sat at the table. At first, the room buzzed with small talk. Owen chattering about his school drawing of a sea turtle, Daniel asking Leo about the turbulence over the Atlantic. Celeste served pie with that immaculate smile. Then I rose, notebook in hand, my heart pounding like war drums. "There's something we must address tonight," I said, voice low but firm. "Something I've carried too long in silence." Celeste's fork froze midway to her lips. Daniel looked at me, puzzled. "Mom?" I opened the notebook, each shaky line of my handwriting staring back at me. Strange behaviors, different handwriting, mood shifts, left hand, right hand. The night Leo called to say Celeste was boarding a plane to Paris while she was supposedly upstairs in the shower. Daniel blinked, confusion etched deep. "What are you saying?" Leo reached into his satchel and placed a passport on the table with a hard thud. "I saw her on that flight, Daniel. First class, sitting with Pierce Langford. She didn't see me, but I saw her, and I had her passport in my hands." Celeste went white. "This is absurd," she hissed, voice trembling. "A trick, a coincidence." Before she could finish, the front door creaked. And there she was, Isadora. Same face, same frame, but dressed plainly, her hands wringing a shawl. Owen gasped, his little voice cracking. "Grandma, why are there two mommies?" The room erupted into chaos. Daniel rose from his chair, color draining from his face. "What? What is this?" Celeste shot me a look of pure venom, but I met her gaze with steel. "Tell him," I demanded. "Tell your husband the truth." She clenched her fists, lips pressed tight. Silence stretched until Daniel's voice shattered it, raw with pain. "Celeste, answer her." At last, she snapped. Her voice rose, sharp as shattered glass. "Fine, yes, she's my twin. I used her. I wanted freedom. Freedom from this dreary life, this suffocating house, this endless grind. Pierce offers me everything Daniel can't, and why shouldn't I take it? Owen burst into tears, clutching my skirt. Daniel staggered as though struck, his hands trembling at his sides. Celeste's confession hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. There was no taking it back. The silence after Celeste's words was unbearable. Even the cicadas outside seemed to pause. Daniel's face drained of color as he gripped the back of his chair, knuckles bone white. "You?" His voice cracked. He swallowed hard, tried again. "You mean to tell me you paraded your sister into our home, let her raise our son, while you... With Pierce," I whispered, my voice trembling but steady enough to pierce the room. Celeste smirked, the mask finally stripped away. "Yes, with Pierce. He gives me what Daniel never could power: money, excitement. Why should I waste my youth playing house when I can have the world?" Owen clung to my skirt, his little body trembling. "Mommy?" His voice was so small, and yet it broke all of us. Isadora stepped forward then, tears streaking her face. "I never wanted this. I only agreed because she promised it was harmless, that no one would get hurt. I thought I was helping, but I see now. I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Daniel. Sorry, Owen." Daniel turned on Celeste, fury overtaking shock. "You used your own sister as a stand-in? You used my mother, my son? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Celeste slammed her hand on the table, rattling the silverware. "I did what I had to. Do you think I was meant for this suffocating little house in Savannah? I was meant for more. Pierce sees that. He'll take me far away from all this mediocrity." Her words were venom, and yet her eyes glittered with something closer to desperation than triumph. Leo rose, his voice sharp as a blade. "Pierce Langford is poison. He chews up women and spits them out. I've seen the headlines, Celeste. Do you think you're the exception? You're just another game to him." For the first time, Celeste faltered. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Daniel's voice, low and trembling, cut through the room. "Get out." Celeste whipped her head toward him. "What?" "Get out. Take your lies, your greed, your filth, and leave this house. You're no wife of mine." His voice rose, shaking with rage. "And you will never hurt Owen again." Celeste's face contorted, a storm of fury and fear. "You'll regret this, Daniel," she spat, her eyes flashing at all of us in turn. "All of you will." She grabbed her purse, stormed to the door, and slammed it behind her so hard the walls rattled. The house sank into a heavy, stunned quiet. Daniel collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Owen sobbed into my lap. Leo's jaw was tight with fury, and Isadora stood frozen near the door, looking like she wished she could vanish into the night. I gathered Owen in my arms, rocking him gently, my own tears blurring the room. "It's over, my love," I whispered into his hair. "It's over now." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't. Not yet. The next days passed, like walking through ashes. Celeste did not return, not to the house, not to Owen's school, not to Daniel's office. It was as if she had evaporated into the humid Savannah air, leaving only the echo of her venom behind. Daniel moved through the house like a shadow. He woke early, dressed for work, and left without breakfast. At night he sat on the porch, staring at the magnolia trees, whiskey glass trembling in his hand. The man who once laughed easily now carried a hollowness that frightened me. Owen, sweet boy, asked questions no child should have to. "Grandma, why did Mommy leave? Did I do something bad?" Each time I held him tight, swallowing the sob in my throat. "No, darling, you did nothing wrong. Your mommy made choices that had nothing to do with you." Still, his eyes lingered on the window at night, as if expecting her silhouette to appear. It was Isadora who filled the void. She returned to the house daily, timid at first, afraid of rejection. She cooked simple meals, read stories to Owen in a gentle voice that never faltered, and tucked him into bed with the same lullaby I once sang to Daniel when he was a boy. One evening, Owen called from his bed, his voice drowsy. Sing it again, Mom Isadora. My heart twisted at the words. Isadora froze, her eyes wide, then leaned down and kissed his forehead. Of course, sweetheart. The melody floated through the house, tender and bittersweet. Daniel heard it too. I saw him standing in the hallway, his shoulders shaking, tears running down his face. He hadn't cried in front of us once, not at the revelation, not when Celeste stormed out, but the sound of Owen calling another woman. Mom broke him in a way nothing else had. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table. His voice was raw. I can't believe I didn't see it, Mom. That she was slipping away, that she could use her own twin like a mask. I thought I was enough. I reached across, clasped his hand. She wasn't looking for enough, Daniel. She was looking for more than any honest heart could give. That isn't your fault. But he shook his head. I can't raise Owen in a house filled with half-truths. He deserves stability. He deserves love. He hesitated, glancing toward the window where Isadora's silhouette moved in Owen's room. And maybe he already found it. I didn't answer. Not then. But deep down, I knew the truth. Love sometimes grows where betrayal tried to destroy. And in the quiet corners of my heart, I began to hope. Weeks drifted into months, and though Celeste's absence left a scar, life began to weave itself into something sturdier. Divorce papers arrived in a crisp envelope from her lawyer Daniel, signed them without hesitation. She made no claim for Owen, not even a word scrawled in the margins. It was as if her own child had been nothing but baggage on the road to Pierce Langford's gilded world. Daniel's grief hardened into resolve. He poured himself into his architecture projects, yes, but more importantly, into Owen. They built wooden airplanes in the garage, went fishing by the marsh, laughed over sticky fingers from pecan pie. And every time, Isadora was there, steady, gentle, a quiet presence who softened the jagged edges of loss. The neighborhood whispered, "Of course." Mrs. Collins leaned over the fence one morning, her eyes wide. "Mara, isn't that Celeste's twin I've seen with you? Folks are saying Daniel's found himself another wife already." I lifted my chin, voice calm but firm. "People can say what they like. We know the truth." And indeed we did. Isadora wasn't an interloper. She was a balm. One evening, after supper, Daniel stood before us with something small in his trembling hand. Owen sat cross-legged on the rug, building towers of blocks, while Isadora folded laundry at the table. Daniel cleared his throat. "Isadora," he said, his voice unsteady, "I don't know if I deserve happiness after what we've been through. But you brought light back into this house. You love Owen as though he were your own. And he loves you." His eyes flicked to me, seeking strength. I nodded, tears already burning my eyes. Then he knelt, holding out a modest silver ring. "Will you marry me? Will you be Owen's mother in truth, not just in kindness?" Isadora's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes filling. "Daniel, Yes, of course." Her voice broke as she reached for him, and Owen clapped his little hands, shouting, "Yay, Mommy Isadora forever!" I pressed my hand to my chest, overwhelmed. That night, beneath the soft glow of lamplight, I saw my family begin to heal, piece by piece, love binding the cracks that betrayal had left. Yet even as I smiled through tears, a shadow lingered. For in the silence of the night, I sometimes wondered, where was Celeste now, and what ruin might she yet bring? Celeste did not vanish completely. Her shadow returned in the cruelest way through the newspapers. One morning, Leo dropped a folded paper on my kitchen table, his pilot's cap still in his hands. "You need to see this, Mom," he said grimly. The headline screamed, "Savannah developer Pierce Langford arrested in federal fraud case, mistress implicated." Below it, a grainy photo showed Pierce being led into a courthouse, handcuffed. Beside him, a woman tried to hide her face beneath a silk scarf. Even through the blur, I knew her. It was Celeste. My hands trembled as I read. Embezzlement. false identities, a string of luxury properties bought under other people's names, a scheme that stretched overseas. And Celeste listed not just as a mistress, but as a partner. Daniel read over my shoulder, jaw clenched. She wasn't just unfaithful, he muttered. She was criminal. Owen padded into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Grandma, what's wrong?" he asked, innocent as always. I pulled him close before he could glimpse the paper. "Nothing, sweetheart, just grown-up troubles." But inside, I shook. The woman who once baked pies in my kitchen, who smiled across the dinner table, had built her new life on lies and stolen money, and now the world knew it, too. That evening, neighbors buzzed. Mrs. Collins knocked, whispering, "I can't believe it. That daughter-in-law of yours, Mara, front-page news." I closed the door gently, unwilling to let her words poison our fragile peace. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the ring now firmly on Isadora's finger. "She'll go to prison," he said finally. "Owen will grow up knowing what she chose. But at least he won't grow up under her shadow anymore." I touched his hand, my voice steady. "He will grow up knowing love, Daniel. That is what matters." Isadora's eyes glistened as she bent to kiss Owen's head. He giggled, unaware of the storm that had passed over him. That night, as I watched the fireflies glitter in the yard, I felt a strange calm. Betrayal had broken us, yes, but truth and love had rebuilt us stronger. And Celeste, for all her schemes, was no longer ours to carry. We had been freed.